Good afternoon. It is, oh, what is it now? Almost 14 UTC? No, 13 UTC. There you go. So, in any case, looking at Bitcoin long short, since we've had a little bit of a die down of the crazy volatility from the inauguration yesterday, in general, we've seen a pretty big increase in longs, basically from those higher lows that we saw yesterday. And with the big retest, we saw a spike up to majority long at 56%. That's now coming down very, very hard as the last few hours have been a nice, steady move to the upside. And now we're finally seeing the breaking of those local longs. People trying to catch the higher low. Now we're seeing retail trying to short it at some structure. So with the funding rates as well, we're back slightly bearish. Like we are definitely bearish. It's over 0.01. Big ones like OKX, which were massively bearish yesterday, are back towards negative actually. So it's pretty wild that we're seeing a big change there. The outlier is really just DYDX, and in general, 0.01. This is standard for across the board. So overall, doesn't have that much of an effect. I think it still looks pretty decent for upside, a lot better than it did with the very high rates we saw from yesterday and the day before and over the weekend. Looking at the liquidations here, just in the last 2 weeks spot, we've got a nice little pocket above us. So if we're going to see any type of local rejection, we want to see a sweep here locally and then a loss of effectively, call it 103.6, breaking back down to test stuff. We are going into a nice flat effectively since the big dump and flush out last night. And for the last 20 hours or so, we've been going relatively sideways. Now, this does two things. The liquidity above us is starting to build back pretty aggressively, and it looks good. If we lose the low again and start losing 100K, actually, even the weekly open at around 101.3, I believe, any loss of this, and I would expect we actually do a big sweep much lower. But until that happens, I think it's still potentially continuation. So the 100K is effectively the 4 hour close that we don't want to lose for a continuation to the upside. So just keep an eye on that major level. On the order heat map, we're seeing a local kind of block step in, a couple hundred Bitcoin stepping in just on Binance alone, right here at 104.6. This is also a kind of a swing level in this structure as well, testing some downside stuff. If we do see a gain here and a sweep through, I would love to see a continuation push up to like 107. There's some good structure up here that's untested, and I would say that anything that starts to gain back, the range high that we saw from yesterday, would probably get us back up to making new all-time highs. So overall, this looks good. We're rounding up very strong, and we have a very clear invalidation. Basically, closing any 4 hour period back underneath this weekly open structure with everything to the left of you fully tested, you're likely to see a bigger move much lower. And we do still have plunge protection down at 90K, so this is good. We still have several thousand Bitcoin stacked down at like 91.3 down to 90K to hold the lows. So overall, just on that and the orders that exist, it looks decent. Now looking over at the chart itself, so we've got a couple nice inflection points that I'd like to see some potential movement on. Like I said, this hold of level, we've got the daily open. It is untested, so if we come back down, we want to see bullish back tests. I don't want to see any more tests of the weekly. The weekly is effectively done. We've already tested it several times. We had 3 major tests. We've tested the lows. The daily is about the only thing we have left to test if we do have a local breakdown. If we start losing the daily, bearishly back testing that, we're probably also losing the weekly. And with the fact that we've already tested this support several times, I would expect us to actually lose the weekly and then break down back towards December, down towards about 96.5, potentially back towards 94 and the yearly open at 93.5. This is where we have massive overlapping support and overlapping demand for this condition. Like I said, you want to see a loss of the weekly open at 101.3 to then potentially target lower. And this would potentially be a break in trend, right? This is to be a major lower low after making a lower high. So that break could definitely indicate a pretty strong trend change. And I would expect lots of long stepping in, trying to catch the dip, and we go much lower than we expect because there is high leverage liquidity below that. So even though I'm the spot ticker at the moment, the big thing here is there's high leverage stuff under 100K, and even some things stacked back down towards 95 and 94 that are pretty juicy. So this high leverage stuff, just looks at the table to the right, lots of 100Xs and 50Xs, and a nice huge pocket right here at around 95, 96K to about 95.5, where I would expect that if we do have a local breakdown, we can start targeting that kind of bigger sweep of level. A friend of mine, StuTube, he uses these really effectively, these Uber fib zones. I think that if we do have a big breakdown, I think it'd be nice to start building a potential bigger long from 93.6 down to 91.5. But again, this is also based on the fact of us breaking down, when the reality is we're still holding the high structure. We popped an all-time high yesterday. We're still looking pretty decent. We've got some levels to test up here at like 106.9, 107K. And any gain of like the weekend structure, which right now is what's holding us down, this 104.5K previous daily open from Sunday. This local little gain, lower time frame, should be a send back to the upside. As long as we hold this low, hold the daily, hold the weekly, everything's a potential buy for continuation to new all-time highs. Only once we start losing these lows, then we can start flipping our bias back to the downside, because then we have clear break of trend. So that's that. Take it easy, and yeah, expect volatility to come in Thursday, potentially with some of the bigger economic announcements. So catch you tomorrow.